We have to anticipate the best and prepare for the worst. What we're living in right this minute is a generational change. If all in the world were as dedicated to environmental stewardship as golf superintendents, we would live in a better world.
Henry DeLozier, welcome to Changing the Business of Golf.
Thank you.
Henry, in this series, I asked my guests to talk about 3 things that they would do to change the business of golf for the better. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but first, let's hear a little bit about you. So you're a principal at GGA Partners, which advises private clubs and golf-related businesses, but tell me a little bit about your work and indeed your journey into the golf industry.
My journey began at the age of 4 when I was included in a golf clinic with my older brother and sister. I liked it, I was good at it, and that took me through my university years where I had the opportunity to play competitive golf, and I thought I was going to play golf professionally. And I decided to give it 3 tries. After 3 tries, I determined it's time to get on with the rest of my life. And while waiting to go to law school, I actually started working in the golf business and discovered it was all second nature to me. Having been around the golf course so much of my life, I just knew how a golf business would work.
And you ended up working in golf in terms of real estate as well, and there was a lot of development going on at that time. Just tell us about that period.
My assignment for America's largest home building company was to help in developing the club components of master planned communities. So around the club would be 5,000, 10,000 homes, and I would be responsible for the, if you will, the whole of the donut, and creating a club lifestyle that was attractive to the markets that we were seeking to sell homes to.
And what was the formula? Tell us what was going on at that period and how that whole kind of golf and real estate mixture was being presented to customers.
It was a wonderful time. First of all, the housing market in the U.S. was white hot. So as a result, we were selling a lot of homes. In those years, the company for which I worked was selling 45 to 47,000 homes a year. And these clubs were a vital part of that when we targeted them to communities above the age of 55. So we referred to them as 55 plus communities or active adult. And golf became a centerpiece of that lifestyle. Built around the golf and the club was other recreation, racket sports and pickleball and bocce, but the key was golf, and that always defined those communities. And of course, alongside almost every fairway were homes. So there were premiums being paid for the privilege of living on the golf course, and that was our business model, and it was highly effective.
Tell me now what's happening in the industry. We've been through an extraordinary period. Give me a sense of where the private club industry particularly is at.
Essentially, after the events of 9/11, there was a significant slowdown, and actually, I believe 2024 was the first year in some 20 years where the number of new golf courses exceeded the number of golf courses that had been taken out of service. So certainly there was a slowdown that came from a loss of demand on housing more so than a lack of popularity for golf. And until the changes brought on by the coronavirus pandemic, who would have ever imagined a global health crisis would be so generous to the game of golf and to private clubs?
And is that what's still happening at the moment? What are you seeing at private clubs? Is there still a lot of demand for private club membership?
There's a great deal of demand. There's a great deal of pending transactions out there, and at the same time, we are already starting to see signs of that demand cooling, slowing it somewhat as interest rates for mortgages increase, as supply becomes more constrained in the U.S. We're seeing a decline there.
Golf tends to go in cycles. The economy tends to go in cycles. Is there any sign of that, do you think? You're talking about a certain fragility in the golf market there.
Absolutely. And the fragility for golf is simply a matter of capacity and the willingness of existing facilities to serve that capacity. Since COVID, there's been a little bit of a concern that many clubs and facilities are becoming over demanded, that there are too many golfers, which is pretty hard to imagine from what it had been just a few years before the coronavirus pandemic.
Henry, the first change you've proposed is for clubs to make better investment decisions. Just give me a flavour of what's going on. You've already talked about clubs being a lot of demand for clubs, a lot of people coming in. So presumably there's a lot of cash around at the moment. And tell me how is that money being spent?
Much of it is being misspent. Much of the spending is going to pet projects, renewing sand bunkers, replacing old or outdated or deferred capital assets, and without real plan, without real intention. And as a result, it's a helter-skelter of spending. And that will come back to roost for clubs that did not spend well or wisely.
So these are kind of sometimes perhaps vanity projects or knee-jerk decisions, but this isn't necessarily according to a longer-term strategy about what the clubs of business should be doing.
Right. There's been no thinking around what priorities should we be investing. And there's no market analysis. There's no understanding of what members want and value. And as a result, there simply is spending based on what groups of leaders think should be spent on.
And that sometimes happens at the board level, and boards come and go as well.
I do.
But you mentioned something there about members and what members think, or let's call them customers for a moment. They are members, we know, but knowing what customers want, their motivations for being part of a club and for sticking in that club, for being a member for the long term. Is that what clubs need to know and invest accordingly?
Yes, they need to spend the time and demonstrate the discipline, which requires patience, to understand what members want, understand how members' wants fit into greater societal trends, so that there's a way to forecast the return on a responsible investment.
Are customers changing, and do clubs need to be aware of that? We've seen a rise of perhaps more occasional golfers, or perhaps the avid golfer, the sort of person who was at a club playing a lot of golf, playing a lot of competition. Maybe we're seeing a little bit less of that type of golf. Is that what's happening?
You're making me smile because I'm thinking much of the spending in golf was spent by people like me. People who love golf, who consider themselves to be capable and avid golfers, when in fact, most of the people being attracted to golf are neither capable nor avid, but they find it an interesting opportunity for socialization. They find it an opportunity to take a nice walk, and they're attracted to that. And we need to be mindful of what attracts today's golfers, and less attentive to what attracted golfers 20 years ago.
What does a well-run club look like? Does it have a long-term strategic plan, and therefore the sorts of investments we're talking about are planned in over a period of time? Just give me a flavour of what a well-run club looks like.
A well-run club it works on typically a 5-year cycle, which is based entirely on its strategic capabilities. The strategy then drives budget. The budget then helps to identify what capital will be available or what capital will be needed for future investment, replacing assets, adding new assets, and that's a well-run club. One that is highly intentional, one that is prepared for the future, where they always famously said that one of the things that made Wayne Gretzky such a terrific hockey player was he skated to where the puck was going to be rather than where the puck was.
And going back to what you were saying earlier, the economy could shift, things could change, things do change, and so that the investments made now need to apply to perhaps what's going to happen in the future.
Absolutely, and let's face it, the economy will shift. It most certainly will, and that's why they call it a cycle. And so we have to anticipate the best and prepare for the worst.
So when you're going into a club to advise them about their strategic plan, about their investment planning, just give us a sense of the sort of conversations that are happening and the way you would go about this.
I like to ask questions. That is always a great starting point. And I ask questions like, how do you know what your members want? How do you know what will be needed at the club 3 years, 5 years, next year? in advance. So are you communicating with your members, or do your members feel welcome to offer up their wants and needs, their viewpoints, and how do you engage them, and how do you sustain that engagement so that as much as possible you're dealing with real-time input from your customer, as you referred to them, and act and plan accordingly. Most of the time, what we see in clubs is club leaders who are certainly well-intentioned and highly dedicated servant leaders are thinking more in terms of what the club members should want rather than what members maybe really want. And it becomes a matter of what the people on the inside of the room prefer as opposed to what the members at large prefer.
And that's an interesting scenario, is that, either on the board or perhaps from the vocal minority that often exists in a club, there's often these ideas about what could or should happen. But actually, how well in touch our clubs with their members, either through surveys or through benchmark, how well do clubs know their members?
At best, okay. Not well. And if you think about it, what we're living in right this minute is a generational transfer, a generational change. The oldest baby boomers have now crossed over the age of 60. And so the new generation of Gen Xers are coming along with maybe a different set of expectations, wants, and needs, but we're still running clubs on the basis of what baby boomers want. And that trips a lot of club leaders up because they typically are boomers and are not thinking about what future members will want.
So there's a lot of demand for golf. People want to get into the clubs. They're paying premium rates to get into clubs, but are they happy? Are they satisfied with the experience?
Member satisfaction is a key. Most clubs struggle with understanding member satisfaction. First of all, in most clubs, members are routinely dissatisfied with their dining and drinking experience, although they're extremely satisfied with their club, immensely proud of their club. But member satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10 will rank out in the high 8s to almost 9.2 on member satisfaction. So there's high levels of satisfaction, and at the same time, Net Promoter Score goes high by comparison to other premium brands. Clubs are achieving significant satisfaction, but at the same time, they don't consistently check back with their members to understand what members want and need. And of course, most importantly, for what will members pay.
And within that, the golf course is obviously that's the main experience. So how does the golf course fare? And do club leaders put enough focus on the golf course? Because there's a lot of things that happen off the grass as well. So is there satisfaction with the course, and are club leaders putting enough focus on the course?
Typically, satisfaction is high with the golf course, and if anything, where satisfaction falls off, it is in non-golf related activities. And in some clubs, there's the perception that the board is overly focused on the golf course and not attentive enough to other amenities and activities. So golf usually fares well. And at the same time, what we're seeing as rising generations come along is they certainly value golf, but they value other things as well. So if there's been a shift from golf, mostly golf, it's become golf and these other things that we find very interesting.
So your message to club leaders, your message to boards in terms of better investment decisions as well?
My message is absolutely recognize the importance of golf, surrounded by other categories of activity or amenities that are similarly important. My colleague Rob Hill and I always think of that as categorical excellence. People who appreciate excellence want excellence in each category. They're not willing to compromise on other things just because the golf course is great.
Henry, your next change is to accelerate the growth in women's golf. Now, one of the things that we've seen after the pandemic and in recent years is that women's segment is the fastest growing segment in the golf industry. Now in the United States, well, North America, we're seeing something around 25% of customers being women. That's great to have that growth, but we're still a long way short from perhaps what we could be and what is a very significant economic opportunity as well.
It is indeed. And And my view on that, the National Golf Foundation has done a great job of tracking the new engagement of golfers. And yes, the involvement of women in golf and its attractiveness to women is accelerating. And at the same time, we need to do more faster. Women have an important place at the club, and we want to be sure that they're made to feel welcome and engaged.
And we were talking about clubs making better investment decisions. Is this where some of that investment should go to improve the experience for women members?
It certainly is. And the key here is understanding that there are always gender inequities, and we need as best we can to try to address those and to try to be sure that everyone feels welcome at the club and feels that what they're pursuing, what their wants and needs at the club can be achieved. The fact of the matter is, while we know many terrific and highly capable competitive women who play golf, there are many others who couldn't care less about a competitive golf experience. They want to get together with their girlfriends. They want to go out and have a nice walk and a beautiful day. And so we want to be sure that there's a place for everyone in that.
So that's an important point, isn't it? Because that's about motivations, and motivations of different members, different customers are different. Golf is not a one-size-fits-all proposition.
That's correct. For those of us who have played competitive golf, we think the only part of golf that matters is competition, when in fact there are a lot of very well and balanced, well-minded or healthy-minded and balanced people who just want to play the game because it's a wonderful game. And I think we want to attract people to that and make them feel welcome in doing so.
And there's an interesting thing that's happened again, perhaps after the pandemic. The world has changed. There's more people working from home, but perhaps we've also valued our time, our access to green spaces, the physical well-being benefits, the emotional well-being benefits, and perhaps even time with family as well. So these are different motivations, but golf doesn't typically sell itself on these things.
No, golf never has sold itself on these things. In my experience, it has instead sold itself on competition, on the purity of the perfect golf shot and so forth. There are so many wonderful values. And I think one of the things that's important that women have brought to golf is an appreciation for those values. What mom doesn't want her children to understand telling the truth, being accountable, holding oneself to a standard that can be defined in the rules of golf? Those are things that you want your child to learn. And I think moms have really tapped into that.
Yeah, and you raise an interesting point there around family as well. And Syngenta's research from 2016 that showed there was a $35 billion a year economic opportunity to get more women into golf also showed that there is a multiplier effect. If you get the female member or female customer, you also more likely to get the family. And it's something like 1.6 times more in terms of value. So there is an incentive, there's a business incentive here for clubs and courses to get more women through the door.
I tell our clients, maybe too often, win the kids and you win the moms. Win the moms and you win the game. So it's important that one can create a safe environment. The moms watch for a safe haven for their families. That's certainly what we saw during COVID, where I'll go to the club for my meal, for my workout, because it's safe there. I know the people who are there, they know me. That's much better than going into a public accommodation.
What do you say to clubs that say, look, we're full, we're busy, we're full, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the time to focus on providing new experiences for different members or for different customers? What's your message to that sort of club?
The sun doesn't shine on the same dog's back every day. Be prepared for a downturn in the economy. Be prepared for the day when you do need those new members. Don't turn them away. Don't turn them off. Find a place where at a minimum you can keep them on your doorstep.
How important is it for clubs to have more women on their staff?
It's quite important that women can see that there are members of their staff that are female. They speak the same language. They understand the same problems. And they relate to the game in similar ways. That's helpful. We have a tendency sometimes when it comes to matters of gender to see it as black and white, where there are many shades of gray. And it's important that we see all of those and allow for those. So being able to see that there's a woman on the staff says, this is someone who will understand me. Is someone who will respect me for my right to be here. And I think that's something women watch for.
And there's diversity of thought within a business is a good thing as well.
Absolutely.
When you have diverse thinking, when you have diverse staff, those businesses tend to be more profitable, and that's proven as well.
Correct, it is. And it carries through into sciences and everything else. The more that you can create a mixture, the greater benefits you develop. And certainly adding women to the golf staff, for example, is a plus.
So while clubs and golf courses are on the right journey in terms of attracting more women and more families, there's more work to be done.
Absolutely. There always will be. One of my favorite things, one of the things that attracted me to the game of golf to begin with, is you're never finished trying to get better. And I think that's what golf is doing right now, is trying to get better. And I applaud all involved that they recognize that we're not there and we need to keep working at it.
Henry, your third change for the business of golf is for clubs to recognise the importance of environmental sustainability. What's the situation on the ground? What do you see when you visit clubs at the moment?
If all in the world were as dedicated to environmental stewardship as golf superintendents, we would live in a better world. These are people who understand the responsibility of stewardship. These are people who are professionals trained in proper technique and proper methods, but that's a real key. I'll tip my hat to the good folks at Syngenta who make it possible for everyone to have good information, the right products, so that they can address matters of concern in ecologically safe ways.
This is not just about doing the right thing for doing the right thing's sake. This is actually core central to the future of the business.
And it's doing the right thing the right way. And I think that's a real key. And again, tying back to my theme of the game of golf, when one learns to be a good player, one learns to do the right things the right way and produces the right results. And I think that's where we're trying to get as it relates to the environment.
Do prospective members ask questions of clubs that they're looking to join in terms of sustainability practice?
They most definitely do. And again, I'm back to the mothers, but females look at Mother Earth and say, we have a responsibility to take care of this. And so they're interested in knowing, what is the club's position on environmentalism? What does the club do to keep my children safe? What does the club do to keep the environment safe? I'm out there in a recreational mode. Is this a safe place for me?
And how good are clubs about talking to members and prospective and members, and indeed demonstrating what they're doing, that they are good stewards of the environment?
Clubs don't talk as good a game as they play. Most clubs do a terrific job of environmental alertness, but they don't talk about it enough. They don't tell members how important this is.
Why is that?
I'm not exactly sure, other than they don't want it to seem as though they're thumping their chest. But the fact is, members want to know. Members expect to know. And frankly, members enjoy knowing or seeing the snapshot of the fox on the 9th tee that happened to be a snapshot when one of the mower men was going out to work on the tee. And seeing that fox, and it brings a smile to your face, as do the ducklings coming out of the water behind their mom. So those are factors that people see on the golf course that they can't see at other places, perhaps in their community.
So that's nature diversity, but there's obviously some very serious issues in terms of water, for example, perhaps the number one issue for so many clubs, and the perception. And Syngenta has done some very detailed research on this, that actually externally, outside the high hedge or outside the gate of the golf club, people think very, very negatively about golf, perhaps undeservedly so, and perhaps because of the lack of communication.
I'm sorry that I believe that's the case as well, that there's a perception outside the gate that these country club people are not environmentally responsible. And the key is for those of us inside the gate to demonstrate that we are dedicated, that we are thoughtful. I find one of the most popular programs that, I serve on the board of directors for Audubon International. One of the most popular programs is this program called Monarchs in the Rough, where golf superintendents have planted milkweed that is a foodstuff for the monarch butterflies. People like that. Once they know that that's happening at their club, they're proud of that. And most clubs do many such things to protect our environment and create a safe haven. The other factor that a lot of people don't understand is all the effort that goes into tracking and recording the use of chemicals, of pesticides that are certainly vital to the good health of the club, while at the same time those issues are being handled in highly responsible ways. And it's these golf superintendents who are so diligent in their stewardship.
Yeah, and it's really important to, you mentioned butterflies there, but pollinators, and it's not always understood just how important pollinators are. There is a direct link between pollinators, food production. Our own human well-being is linked to that biodiversity.
Most definitely. And of course, let's face it, however many acres there are of manicured turf, that's an oxygen machine. That's creating fresh air. And most people overlook that or just take it for granted. But they certainly don't think those folks behind the high hedge are creating fresh air for me. And they won't until we in golf do a better job of communicating that.
We've seen some extraordinary climatic events in recent times. We've seen extreme heat. We've seen storms and floods. Golf courses also play their part, particularly in urban areas where golf courses can serve to cool areas, and they can also soak up and filter runoff. So they have a really important role to play, particularly in urban areas.
In the communities where I was responsible for developing the golf and seeing to its well-being, one of the key components was that the golf course became the central drainage area within the community. Most storm drains drained to the golf course, and so that became a great place to catch and reserve water, and at the same time it took the dangerous water from people's living environment and made it for a safer community. So yes, there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of advantages, and of course there's always that green open space that the golf course creates.
So recognizing the importance of environmental sustainability is one thing. It's another thing to demonstrate and communicate it.
Absolutely. And one of the best programs that I have seen and that we recommend for our clients is for the golf superintendent and the club staff to invite scouting troops from the area to come to the club and learn about environmentalism. And of course, there are other badges to be earned at the club as well, but just giving the children, the scouts, the opportunity to see all that's done to create a safe haven is something that's really important for them. And of course, what do the children do? They go home and over dinner, their parents say, "What did you do at scouts today?" "Oh, we went to the golf course. We got a chance to see this thing." Did you know all the things they do to use water efficiently? Those are lessons that everyone wants to learn through their child.
And I know there's various programs on that. GCSAA do First Green, but those things are really, really important, getting children onto golf courses, because they change perceptions at an age which is critical.
Of course, and as I acknowledge, I have a bias for that. Growing up on a golf course, you understand how important it is to see the diversity of habitat, to fauna, flora, that helps you to understand how the world could work in maybe in a better way.
And the use and availability of data is also really important. You mentioned superintendents at the top, and they play a critical role, but they have the data that can actually dispel some of the myths that exist outside of the golf club.
Sometimes I say that golf has become awash in data, but unfortunately it's being interpreted sometimes by people who don't understand the data. The golf superintendent does understand the data and is a voice of authority, someone who knows what they're talking about. It's fun to hear all the data, but it's more important to hear data from someone who knows what they're talking about.
So there are things like best management practices, there's all sorts of tools and other organizations that can help with this. What would be your message to clubs about how they go about recognizing the importance of environmental sustainability and communicating it?
Recognize and empower your golf superintendent to take the lead. That's your expert in this category.
Henry DeLozier, thank you very much for speaking to Changing the Business of Golf.
It is my pleasure.